Hey guys, my name is Chelsea Rivera and this is my critical assignment. The facility I chose was an athletic training facility, and I chose this because once I get my master's, I want to become an athletic trainer for a professional team. As far as risk management, I went with three of my choices, which were sports related concussions, management of acute skin trauma, and emergency planning in athletics. So, for sports related concussions, the best thing to do is to make sure you're identifying the signs of a concussion, making sure that the administrators as well as parents are made aware of the concussion as well as the symptoms, and making sure that proper concussion tests are completed. In the case of Crouse versus Westchester, it was a 10th grader who was a football player who was hit during a game and lost consciousness. After he regained consciousness, he had had head pain, which he did notify the assistant trainer or the assistant coach as well as the trainer. But the proper precautions weren't taken. Um, Minutes later, the coach actually put him back in where he was hit a second time. So now he had been hit twice in the head and he had blacked out as well the second time. It wasn't until they took him to his doctor when his mom found out about it and they diagnosed him with a concussion, and they made him take time off of school because his brain needed to rest. He wasn't sleeping very well. And so, if this all could have been preventive had we identified the signs that he did have a concussion, his parents were made aware sooner than what they were told, as well as they should have been a proper concussion test once the incident happened. The second one is the management of acute skin trauma. This is making sure that you're cleaning the wound, you're dressing it correctly, as well as making sure the aftercare is taken care of by the athlete themselves. In the case of Jerutheus and Cleveland Browns versus the Cleveland Browns, he had sustained an injury and they addressed it and cleaned it in the facility. But later on, he had produced a staph infection. He felt that he wasn't notified of the precautions of attaining the staph infection, so he wasn't aware of that being able to occur. It could have been as well that the cleanings weren't done properly, or maybe the dressing wasn't done correctly, and it allowed the infection to occur. But had he, the athlete, known as well as the athletic trainer known the symptoms of an infection, this could have been dealt with in a whole different um, area. It could have been made sure that staph wasn't going to be an option, um, and so being able to clean it properly, dress it properly, as well as notify the athlete that they need to do these certain things to make sure that an infection doesn't occur, and if it does occur, what to do. The next one is emergency planning. Having a plan is important, and needing the plan is going to help athletic trainers as well as coaches, and then having the components of a plan. Being able to give a plan to a coach or trainer in case of an emergency, because you can't always justify what's going to happen. You can't always assume something's going to happen or you don't know it's going to happen. So having a plan definitely will help guide a trainer and a coach. In the case of Mahagab versus Orleans Parish School Board, this was the case where Robert was a football player, and during practice they were doing sprinting and he fell and was fatigued. Had they known what to do in case of this could have been a whole different situation. The friends actually ended up helping him back onto the school bus, and he went home, where he then had his mom take him to the hospital, and he was actually suffering from a heat stroke. Had the coaches known the symptoms of a heat stroke or even had a plan of what to do when a player falls ill, this could have been a whole different situation. Employment loss. So there are so many laws that can occur in an employment facility. For the three I chose was race, harassment, and religion. So with race, it's best to make sure that you develop a policy that racial discrimination does not occur, and that it's a policy that is not taken lightly. It's to be given to all employees, so that they know what your rules are and what your policies are against race discrimination. And also, the best way to do is to make sure you create an easy complaint procedure. So if someone is being discriminated against race, it's an easy way to turn that into them being able to talk to somebody and let them know what's going on. And for this one, I chose Peters versus the Georgia Southern. He felt, though, as if he was being fired based off his race and that he wasn't even hired prior to that as the athletic trainer because of his race as well. If we right ahead jump and make sure that we let them know that race is not an issue, that we looked based off of education or experience, and it automatically lets them know that there's no discrimination going on. As far as harassment, the best thing to do is make sure you tell somebody, file a complaint, as well as determine if it's sexual or non-sexual harassment so that you're able to determine how to handle it. In the case of Rader versus Whitehall, she was working for an orthopedic facility and she was assigned to a school where she was being harassed by the custodian. It wasn't sexual, so there's no ever inappropriate touches, but there were inappropriate comments, and he would say how he would drive past her home. So the court had decided that since she did file the claim, that the next step, because he continued to do this behavior, was to change his work schedule completely so that he wasn't there when Miss Radar was. So the best thing to do with harassment, like I said, is just to make sure you tell someone and to always acknowledge what your harassment policy is and let people know that it's not taken lightly as well. And that's the best way to get through any type of harassment incident, just to make sure that they know the rules, the policy, and to let them know that it's not tolerated. The next thing is religion. Religion, obviously you need to make sure you accommodate, whether it's substituting shifts, making sure there's a written policy in regards to it ahead of time so they understand the policy, as well as having to do schedule changes. In the case of Oakley versus Orthopedic Association, she had felt that she wasn't being accommodated for her religious days. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They actually did accommodate her and were giving her days off, but at one point it became super excessive where there were constantly days off, and it was affecting not only her work, but it was affecting those who having to fill in her schedule and work overtime just to make sure her days were covered. So to an extent, we need to, yes, accommodate, but if it's to the point where you're constantly needing certain days off or you're constantly needing days off, then maybe it's time to look for something that's more appropriate for your religious schedules. Application and faith integration. So I've learned a lot of legal terminology and the importance of sports law. I've been able to identify the key risk management as well as employment laws of a facility that I hope to work in someday. I now understand how I would manage my facility if a problem were to arise, as well as to be able to prevent certain situations from occurring. If I was a manager, I'd always look out for discrimination, whether it be based on race, religion, gender, or age. I'd make sure the proper precautions are taken when helping an athlete so that no mistakes are made. I'd always have a plan and make sure that another person is aware of a situation so that I have everything covered. The 3 Bible verses that really came close to me would be Proverbs 11:14, where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. So as long as I show my coworkers or my employees that I'm going to do what I'm asking them to do, then they'll see that, I'm truthful and that I want them to follow what I'm doing as well. James 4:10, humble yourself before the Lord and he will uplift you. Athletic training is a hard position. You're dealing with athletes who may have serious injuries, who may have career-ending injuries. And if you humble yourself and just show God that, that you're trying and you want to help this person, that you'll be uplifted and you'll have the courage to be able to help them. Philippians 4:13, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So if you're struggling and you feel like there's an athlete that you're just trying to help, but he's just not getting better or she's not getting better, just pray to God and he's going to give you the strength to push through and help that athlete. Managers could face legal issues for using God's word to guide their career. This is a big thing. There could be issues where a trainer believes that God won't allow a certain treatment even though that treatment may help the client. Or if they're constantly preaching to their clients, they could be faced with harassment. Maybe they deny a treatment because of a person's religious views and because they don't go with their own. All those things could definitely be a factor, but we want to look to it that we aren't putting our religious views onto other people and just making sure that we're truthful to who we are and others will do what they want to do as long as they don't affect your religious beliefs. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it.